Friday night NASCAR. We are live. Welcome to a little NASCAR 7 edition, NASCAR Busch Series Racing. And we're at the Darlington Raceway here tonight for this evening's race, the Diamond Hill Plywood 200. And this is going to be a full race, so 147 laps, 200 miles at the Lady in Black under the lights. And this is a very, very treacherous and slippery racetrack. Through practice, I was 6th fastest, did up my time a little bit into qualifying, made some setup changes to the race car mid-practice. Qualifying, I knew I was going to have to push extremely hard, put it on the edge of grip to try to get the pole, because based off of what I ran in practice, if I would have ran my fastest practice lap in qualifying, I would have been 3rd, picked up enough time to get to the pole, picked up about 1/10 of a second. That's all that was needed. So appreciate everybody tuning in here tonight. No NASCAR actual live commentary coverage today because all that was through the weekend already at Bristol, Thursday through Saturday. We'll have more live commentary action next weekend from Kansas Speedway, Friday through Sunday. NASCAR 7 streams leading up to then. So we're going to get this race underway here. We're not going to waste any other time. Again, we are starting on the pole, and we come into this race just 60 points behind Clint Bowyer for the championship. So we'll see. And already right out of the gate here, Clint Bowyer trying to block with Tony Stewart second. Doesn't want him to lead a lap at all costs. Stewart going up the racetrack into turns 3 and 4, in danger of losing second place to Kyle Busch in the 5. Unless that's the 48 of Jimmy Johnson, one of the Lowe's cars. And there's the 5 bonus points for Bowyer, leading lap 1 from the pole. Tiger's about to be a game up. I know, it's insane. I'm excited. Good sports weekend for me personally. Ryan Blaney makes it out of the first round of the NASCAR playoffs last night, which I pretty much expected was going to happen, but still did. Green Bay Packers win another game without Jordan Love today. My Michigan Wolverines pulled off the upset on the USC Trojans yesterday, and now the Tigers are not only winning yesterday and today, but Minnesota losing 2 games in the same day today to Boston, potentially, assuming that they don't come back and win this. Crazy. Snooze Fest at Bristol last night, what do you think? Yeah, it definitely wasn't an entertaining race, I'll say that much, which sucks because Bristol's my favorite track. And I will say, with the next-gen car of the short track race tracks that we've seen with it, and with the package, it seems like Bristol's probably been the better one up until this year. Honestly, if Kyle Larson wasn't the leader dominating the race for what it was, because I do think he had the fastest car, I do think we could have had a little bit more racing, because we saw tight battles from 2nd through 4th at times during long green flag runs where the 2nd through 5th place car or 4th place car would be bunched up within a half a second. I think it would have been a lot more interesting if that was for the lead rather than for 2nd periodically throughout the night. But then as soon as something like that would happen, we get a caution for, Logano spinning or a stage end or LaJoie in stage 3, and we never really got something like that. Again, not only for the lead, but even right at the very end of the race as well in that very final green flag run. So definitely for the most part uneventful. Unless there was, of course, that caution, but even if there was at that point, Suarez was like 3 laps down, and Gibbs had already fallen off the lead lap, so he wasn't going to be able to gain many spots, so it wasn't really going to change anything, even if we had a late yellow in the last couple laps. So, yeah, it was definitely anticlimactic, to say the least. But the only thing that came out of last night that I'm thankful for, other than, of course, my guy Ryan Blaney making it out of the round of 16, which, again, I assumed was going to happen anyway, but we didn't have an overtime restart. We have had so many of those through the summer months. I'm okay finally having a late race long green flag run. This one, the longest at Bristol since what, like 2012 or something like that, they said on the broadcast. Longest green flag run since 2012 at Bristol. But, so if there's a silver lining, at least we didn't get a bunch of late yellows. I mean, some people hope for that. As a pure racing fan, I don't. I get it if it happens from time to time, but I feel like this season in particular in the Cup Series, it happens a lot, especially in the second half of the regular season into the first couple playoff races. Now, I'm glad we had at least a straightforward race. I wish we had a little bit more racing throughout, but at least there was that. NASCAR's still going to obviously have to do something. I mean, we've been clamoring for more horsepower since this car debuted. You know, why have we not pulled the trigger on it yet? Like, why don't we even test it? And I get they're trying to get a new manufacturer in the sport, but they've been saying this for, you know, since the next gen debuted, that they were trying to get, you know, a new manufacturer by then, which is why they dropped the horsepower in the Gen 6 car in the intermediates to 550. I thought that was part of it, at least. Because I don't even think the intermediate package was that bad in the Gen 6 era. I mean, there were some banger races. I think most of the problem were some of the tracks at that time, you know, 2013 through 2019, 2020 that they were going to. You know, Michigan had been repaved. Kansas was getting better, but remember, that was repaved in the early 2000s, right around when the next gen debuted. There's some other tracks. Kentucky, Texas had been reconfigured at that time. You know, both those tracks with Kentucky, too. So there were a lot of tracks that were primarily one group with the intermediate side. I think that hurt it more at that time, too. So we've had reduced horsepower in NASCAR for a while. Now, I will say they've increased the horsepower with the next gen on the intermediate tracks. And what do you know? The intermediate track racing seems to be better with the next gen car than what it was with the Gen 6. I wonder why that is. Now, I'm not saying that that is the sole reason necessarily, but you would think it helps. Drivers are more on the edge of control. Therefore, we see more passing because there's more on throttle, you know, time going on. We're not seeing that on the short tracks because we went from 750 and these guys just had too much mechanical grip. I mean, that's what it boils down to. Now, you can have the tires degrade and the tires wear over a long period of time, and sure, that will help. We saw that in the spring race at Bristol. You know, when you have a lot of tire wear, the drivers are going to be on the edge of control, and they'll have to work the throttle that way. But I think pretty much everybody, for the most part, would say that that was a little bit too much to the extreme. And in a result of, you know, it being too much in the extreme and realizing that maybe it was a temperature issue that wasn't allowing for rubber to be laid down on the racetrack, they kept the same tire. And we had pretty much the same race that we had at Bristol the year before. The only reason it was, you know, more boring in my take or in the fans' take is because we had one driver lead 460 plus laps, where at least in the last couple years, the Bristol night race, that hasn't happened. So yeah, it stinks that I just don't understand why they don't even test it. Like, you can't have a test session, you know, especially like during this off season. We can't have like a test session at a Phoenix or a, you know, I'm trying to think of another short track that they could go to. I mean, maybe Martinsville into the off season might be a little cooler there, so it might not be as accurate of a test, but like, we can't test it. Both Bristol races were horrible this year. If you're talking about the Xfinity race too, I will say the Xfinity race, it wasn't, that was more of obviously a track problem because we know the Xfinity cars are usually pretty good. They race pretty well. That night, they didn't have resin or PJ1 down on the bottom groove like they did for the Cup race on Saturday. They added that Saturday to try to create more multi-groove racing, which we saw a little bit more of that. It didn't seem like the outside was as dominant as it was. I think it was more the case that the cars were so equal and there was too much mechanical grip. The same problem we've had with the next-gen car already on short tracks and road courses. But with the Xfinity race, it was like all the way around the top. Couldn't pass on the bottom because the top was so dominant. It was like 2012, essentially. Bristol at that point. But like I said, they didn't have resin or traction compound, PJ1, whatever, you know, extra grip essentially down on the bottom for that race. If they would have had it down there like they did for the Cup race, I do think the Xfinity race would have been better than what we had seen it. But Yeah, but the Cup race, it's just the typical next-gen short track issue at this point. I mean, it's not, I don't think it's any new news. Basically, I sound like I'm beating a dead horse when I say the same stuff after every single short track race, but here we are. I mean, this is 3 full years that we've had with this car, and it's the same issue we had since Martinsville in the spring of 2022 when William Byron and Kyle Larson split for like 200 laps, led nearly a piece in that race. And the only reason one driver passed another was because of pit stops. They didn't actually pass each other on the track, which was basically the... Well, I guess Larson did pass Bowman under green last night, but... Yeah, kind of the same thing, where it's just a follow the leader situation. They get into lap traffic, things stack up a little bit more because you're having to work around slower cars, but in the case of Larson having that good of a race car that he was able to pass, the lappers a lot more clearly and faster than anybody else in the field. That's why he was able to open up a gap and maintain it. I don't think he had bigger than a 3.5, 4 second lead at the most last night. And that was pretty much in the final 20, 30 laps of the race that he got to that big of a lead. Before that, though, I don't really think he was just kind of controlling that gap that he had. Oh, you were talking about both Cup races? I didn't mind the spring race. I thought the spring race was way better than the race that we had tonight. I do think it was overboard with the tire wear. But because it was such an anomaly and I hadn't seen anything like that in NASCAR before, I mean, to a certain extent, you could say like the 2008 Brickyard 400, but that was a way worse level. Like that, we had tires popping after every 10 laps. At least with managing tires, once the drivers figured it out by the final stage that they could manage tires, they could push them 50 to 70 laps or more before having to pit. It was more of like the first stage or two was like a growing pain situation because these teams didn't know that that was going to happen until it happened in the race. And that was largely due to practice was only 20 minutes. At least practice this time around this weekend was 45, so we had a good gauge. Every driver had an extra 25 minutes of practice from what they had in the spring. They were able to make a really long run and see whether there was fall off or not. If we would have had a 45-minute practice in the spring, I can guarantee you we wouldn't have seen that many cautions for tire failures. They would have known that they would have had to manage it from the start, and we wouldn't have seen as many issues. So I personally, yeah, like I said, I didn't mind the spring Bristol race. Honestly, that spring Bristol race we had this year was the best short track race I think we've had with the next gen car, to be completely honest. Richmond this year in the summer was really close, but I do think it was manufactured a little bit more because of the two different tires. That strategy itself added an extra element to where if it was just like a typical NASCAR race where you had the same, tire compound for the entire race, then I don't think it would have been much different from any other Richmond race. There would have been more fall off than what we had before, but that track already had a lot of fall off as it was anyway, so I don't think it was going to change the strategy much. Michael Turner, Ethan Chua, thanks for tuning in lately to the stream as well. Jeffrey Giordano, thanks for tuning in. Rams won the football game. I saw they were down for most of it. Freaking the guy I was facing my fantasy league this week at Kyron Williams, he had 3 touchdowns before I started the stream. Probably going to lose this week. I'm down by like 8 points, but all I have left is my kicker, Koo for Atlanta tonight, and he still has Dalton Kincaid. Unless Koo kicks like 4 or 5 field goals or something like that tonight, which isn't impossible. He's made quite a few field goals already these first 2 weeks, mainly last week. Against Philly, he had quite a few. So if he scores double digits for me and Kincaid doesn't get a touchdown and only has like 30, 40 yards at most receiving, a couple catches, I could still win, but it's not likely. Both of our defenses scored a ton, so that kind of canceled out. I had so many injuries on my fantasy team this week. I had George Kittle out, Raheem Mostert out. I had to drop him, pick up Cam Akers. Luckily, he scored a touchdown. That was a good pickup. because, yeah, Debo was out. George Kittle was out, so I had to start Isaiah Likely, and I think he only scored me 1 point. No, he didn't even score me 1 point. He had 1 reception for 4 yards. I had 0 points because it's not a PPR league. That's why they have to get more practice. Racing a little better. Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. Oh, I don't know that would quantify for the racing itself being better. I think it would lessen the likelihood that we would see a fluky race, if that makes any sense. Like, there wouldn't be any added variables that would cost a majority of teams track position, wrecking with their cars or whatnot, mechanical failures at the beginning of a race. Like, that would be lessened with more practice. I don't know that it would make the race necessarily better. I do think it will help the drivers and the teams, fix any bugs that they have going into the weekend. It kind of like Daniel Suarez this weekend. He unloaded with a 30th place car and he ran 30th the whole race. If they had more practice like they used to, now I know they had 45 minutes this weekend, but if they had 2 full practice sessions like they used to prior to COVID, 2 or 3 depending on the track, he probably wouldn't have been a 30th place car this weekend. They probably could have fixed on it at least a little bit, and maybe by the end of the race he would have been a 15th to 20th place car. They were going to fix it completely, but he wouldn't have been in danger of missing the next round of the playoffs because he would have been running mid-pack instead of back of the pack. But because they basically had 1 or 2 tire stints of practice, didn't really get to work on it much, and qualified about where he was in practice, because qualifying's the same day as practice now. It never used to be, and here we go. Don't have a lot of time to change setup wise. So Kyle Larson dominated that race last night. If we fast forward to this race going on right now, we're already 36 laps in. Clint Boyer has led them all from the pole, and it's a 2-car breakaway with Brian Vickers basically running in second behind him the whole time, but has really not put enough pressure on Boyer to make this pass. I think this 2-car is really strong. Got to find a way to keep this track position, and who knows what could happen. This is going to be a 2-stop race. I hit the halfway mark on fuel right at lap 33 during this run. First Tigers winning record since 2016. I mean, it's cool, but it doesn't matter if we don't make the playoffs, in my opinion. Well, I mean, it matters morally, I guess, but I want to see them in the playoffs. The job ain't done yet, though we are getting very close. And I think we will make the playoffs, honestly. I said that going into this weekend slate of games. Just, they're playing so much better than Minnesota and KC. Both those 2 teams have fallen off a cliff over the last month and a half, and Detroit is one of, if not the best team in baseball over the last several months. So, yeah, they'll be fine. Looks like there's an engine issue for the 21 of Jeff Burton. Burton seems to be slow on the back straightaway headed towards turn 3. And one of the RCR cars is going to be done for the night now. Well, that makes things a little interesting. Win the next 6 games. We don't even have to win the next 6. I mean, we control our own destiny, obviously, so if we did that, we would make the playoffs. But honestly, as bad as Minnesota and Kansas City is playing right now, I feel like, even 4 and 6 would probably be enough to get in. That means the Twins would have to go, if we go 4 and 6, being the game up on Minnesota, that means Minnesota would have to go 5 and 6 to finish out the season. I don't think they do that. I really don't think so. I think we're in a great spot. I think the Twins, going into this last series, they were 10 and 19 in their last 29. They went, assuming they lose this game against Boston, they're playing right now. You'll have to keep me updated. I know you said they were 9-2 when the stream started. So if they lose, They'll have an 11-21 record in their last 33 games. Like, that's just, they're bad. They're a bad team right now over the last just over a month. They're not playing good playoff caliber baseball, and I don't see how they, make that game up with as easy of a schedule as Detroit has to finish out. Yeah, they have a tougher schedule, too, than us, too. Well, we got a caution contact there, bringing out our first yellow as Greg Biffle goes for a spin. Looked like he got sandwiched. Oh, a little bit of pile inage. So he was right behind the 110 car very tightly, and he got hit from behind by J.J. Yaley. That spun him into the outside wall. Then he came back down the racetrack and got collected there as well. So we will see pit stops here for the first time tonight. And we're going to take right side tires only here. And I know that's a little bit of a stretch for strategy purposes. But we'll do that. We'll put a half around a wedge into the car to try to adjust for the right sides only. I want to try to go wire to wire tonight. I want to win this race off pit road. And I want to try to lead every lap in this race. And that caution makes it feasible now as we're having to pit under yellow. Obviously a very abrasive racetrack, but we were only about halfway through that run. Boyer will easily win the race out of the pits.
The car to the head of the pack didn't pit.
They did, because we're still the leader. I don't know why he said they didn't pit. That doesn't make any sense. Lap 46, green flag back in the air. 102 laps to go. Like Burton in New Hampshire, yep. Only this is a Busch Series race, though, so it's only 200 miles. It's a short race, so that also makes it feasible to try to do this. I think track position is going to be key, honestly. I think even with these two tires, as long as we hold on to the lead, we'll be fine. Left sides aren't even in the yellow yet on the tire wear indicator, so that's good for us. And we'll see what Clint Boyer can do. I mean, qualified on the pole for a reason, right? Our second pole of the year. I wanted to make sure Tony Stewart wasn't going to win the race off pit road, because I would assume he was in the top 5 when the pit stop started with that caution. Yeah, that was worse than last night, that's for sure. But hey, restricted horsepower at New Hampshire. See, slowing the cars down is not the. I mean, I talked about them doing it consistently since like the Gen 6 era. If you really think about it, when they did it back, and I know it was like a safety issue at that time with NASCAR that they did that initially. They went a little overkill with the safety by throwing restrictor plates on it for both those races that season before having the kill switch in the race car. They added that, so safer walls eventually down the line as well. The safer barrier also helped make New Hampshire a much safer racetrack than it used to be. But yeah, slowing the cars down ain't the answer. You would think that we have learned this lesson from like 20 plus, like that New Hampshire race was in 2000, or 2001, excuse me. 2001, well, it was, let me think about this for a second. No, it was 2000. I think it was both the 2000 races. And then was it 2001 as well? It was also restrictor plate. You'll have to let me know. I know they did it for 2000. I want to say they did it for 2 years in a row before the kill switch was implemented in the race cars. But anyway, yeah, a race from nearly 25 years ago. You would think like slowing the cars down. Are they closer together? Yes, but you can't pass. So what good does that make? All these smart people in NASCAR, they can't figure it out. Well, the crazy thing is, too, I've heard a bunch of driver interviews just in the last year or two alone with, like, why don't we add more horsepower? I know Kevin Harvick on his podcast has mentioned it. Dale Jr. on his podcast has mentioned it. Even active drivers. I know Christopher Bell's very vocal about it. Denny Hamlin's very vocal about adding more horsepower. That could, why not try it? Like, why? I don't understand why they don't listen to the drivers. Fans will say, like, oh, they don't listen to us. I think NASCAR listens to its fans more than it does their drivers, for sure. I think they've made a lot of changes to the sport for the good, with scheduling and stuff like that fans have claimed. They've received it. But when it comes to, like, driver treatment and team treatment, the people that are actually in their sport working under the banner name NASCAR every single week for 38 weeks a year, why are they not listening to them? That's what doesn't make any sense at all to me. Like, without them, there would be no NASCAR to begin with. If every team, with the charter just decided to strike tomorrow, they're not going to be able to put on a race. How are they going to do that? They can't. So why don't they try to please the people that are already there? It doesn't... I don't know, man. It doesn't make any sense to me. Because I will say, like, obviously, I try not to read as much stuff, on the internet, social media with NASCAR fans, because you're going to have so many varying opinions. You're not going to please everybody, no matter what changes you make for the better, for the good, or don't change anything at all from where we're at right now. There's going to be people that are either stuck in the past or, like, it's just, they've gone so far in at this point. Like the playoffs, for instance. There's a lot of people, believe it or not, younger fans in NASCAR that have been around for 10, 15, or less years. They don't know what it's like to have, a full season points format, for instance. So if you were to chop the playoffs or any sort of playoff format, for next season, say, hey, we're going to do away with this, I think there would be people upset with it. Like, you're not going to please everybody. They're so far in at this point. I think, stuff like that, I feel like they have to just keep the same just for the sake of consistency, I guess, with the sport. And they pretty much have with that for about the last, 10 years now. They've had a 16-man playoff format. So, that I at least commend them for. I hated that they were changing it like every 2 to 3 years. That was getting ridiculous. But, yeah, you're not going to please everybody. You never are. So I try not to factor the fans' opinions into anything. And so for that reason, I really think they should listen to the teams that are actually in NASCAR, that are actually working on the cars every single day, like I said, for 38 weeks out of the year. They know more about it than we do. I could say add more horsepower. I know you're seeing like other drivers and stuff say that, but they might be able to figure out other stuff other than that you can do with the car. And I'm sure they mentioned it to NASCAR, and NASCAR's either, turned a cold shoulder or told them flat out, no, we're not doing that. Like, yeah, that's what doesn't make sense to me, which is kind of hard to reconcile with, but it is what it is, I guess. I can't do anything about it, so I try not to complain about it too much. A little bit of a vent, but it wasn't like ticked off about it, I'd like to say I have a pretty calm demeanor. I don't get over animated with the stuff. I just spitball things and, try to get my opinion out there, but I'm not one for trying to, persuade people into thinking my opinion. You can agree with me. You can not agree with me. I couldn't care less. The one lug wheel. I think that's just because they fundamentally changed the car too much. That one lug was better. Because I remember when they were first making the next gen, they were contemplating that it was going to be 6 lugs. That they were going to have to add an extra lug nut to keep basically the same kind of style, I guess, like pit stop that they have now, and they ended up having to make a late change to that to make it a single lug. Because we already had problems with loose wheels before, missing lug nuts at the end of a race, costing drivers and teams fines and stuff. By going to a single lug, it lessens the blow. While we had a lot of hiccups with that in the first year and a half, I don't think we've seen that issue at all this year. I can't recall any time this entire season where they didn't get a lug nut secured tightly, a tire came off causing a caution. I literally don't remember it at all from this year. And honestly, most of the second half of last season, I don't remember it either. It was just something that was new the teams had to get accustomed to, and once they did, they've flawlessly executed it to a T at this point, just like they did before. But I think it was going to cause more problems if they would have had to go to 6 lugs. But that also is a result of why did they fundamentally change the stock car. I'll say that in like air quotes, the stock car, because it's basically a sports car now. But why did they fundamentally change it as much as they did? Like, that's my question. Why did they purpose build it like a sports car, essentially, and not a next generation stock car? Watching NASCAR since I was a month old. It feels like that, I guess. I mean, I don't remember the very first race I ever watched. Like, I've just known of watching NASCAR as long as I can remember. I mean, I might have watched Dale Jarrett win the 1999 championship when I was a few months old. Like, I visually don't remember that, watching that, being as young as I would have been, but I could have been, at my grandparents' house potentially watching that. Who knows? I'll never know. I know my dad never really watched NASCAR a whole lot. He would watch the Daytona 500 every year, like most casuals would, or some of the casual racetracks, like a Dega or something like that. Maybe a Bristol from time to time, but never really went like out of his way to watch like an Atlanta race or a Texas, like just a random NASCAR race any given weekend. He never really did that. I actually had gotten my parents into watching NASCAR more since I started this YouTube channel and going to tracks and getting them to go to Michigan every year. They keep up with it way more over the last several years than what they did ever me growing up. Even though I had watched it just as much as I do now growing up, just it was more silently, like in my bedroom or in a with my grandparents on the weekend or something of that nature. I was never really watching it with my dad or anything. Especially during football season, he'd be watching football. I can remember, I would be like, oh, I want to watch the race or whatever. So I'd either go to grandma's house, go to grandma and grandpa's, watch the race. They'd come back because I would have had school the next day on a Monday. Or, I forget how old I was when I finally got a TV in my room. I was like 10, 12 years old or something like that. Very fortunate because most people, my age at that time didn't have that. But like, all right, hey, if you're going to watch it every weekend, we'll get you a TV. You can watch, NASCAR every weekend. Because he really didn't want to miss his football games. So, he's as diehard about watching football as I am with NASCAR. So it just never, for that reason, it never like coexisted with like wanting to watch the same sport at the same time. So I love my Packers, but I ain't missing it for a race. And I raced growing up as a kid too, because my grandpa got me into that. My dad never raced or anything like that growing up, so that probably factored into it a ton too. You know, I grew up going to a dirt track with my grandpa every weekend, and although he would maybe go on a temporary occasion, or he definitely didn't like race growing up, so he definitely doesn't have that same like, you know, racer's mindset into like watching a race as a traditional race fan, even like if he goes to Michigan. Like this year, when that caution came out for Truex hitting the wall, I'm like, that's not a yellow. I'm a little upset about that. He's like, but it's going to stack the field up again. So like, I feel like that's the fans NASCAR is going for, which is that's not it. They're going for the fan that's going to randomly show up to watch like 5 races a year. Like, that's not the fan we should be like trying to appease every single weekend, because they're not there every weekend. But yeah, anyway, it was kind of like my upbringing, I guess, with me wanting to watch racing every weekend and whatnot. As everyone came into my room, you know, I don't know why you would. No, they would never do that. I mean, it would be no different than if I was like just randomly, you know, playing a video game on my own well before I had a YouTube channel, or, you know, when I'm watching the race, for instance, now, doing the live commentary streams, I'm watching the race with you guys. It'd be no different than if I was just like watching it myself. So when I first started the channel, yeah, that wasn't an issue. I was doing my own thing anyway, you know, so is what it is. So the very first fuel run of the race, Clint Boyer led the entire time from the pole. Brian Vickers was running behind him the entire time. It was a 2-car breakaway. This green flag run after the caution from the Greg Biffle spin, it's Martin Truex Jr. and Kyle Busch who are keeping up with Clint Boyer in a 3-car breakaway at the front of the field instead. But still, nobody has put enough pressure on Clint Boyer to try to make this pass for the lead. We're just consistently there. This track isn't very wide, and Boyer's got a good handling long-run car that with the speed he's got in it, he can just maintain. Kind of like Larson at Bristol last night. So with Jeff Burton out of this race, when we go to do our field swap, we'll only be able to do it with Kevin Harvick. Everybody during that first caution did pit, and we restarted at lap 46, I believe, because we had 102 to go in the restart. So obviously everybody's still going to have to pit one more time. It was guaranteed to be a 2-stop race anyway. So when that caution came out, I knew I was going to pit because we were well within the window to make it on 2 stops. Get to within 60 to go, we get another caution. We'll probably pit under yellow again, to be completely honest. Obviously leading every lap and being past the halfway point already in this race. We have already clinched the most laps led. Car low, trying to block mid-corner. Nearly turned ourselves off the front bumper of Martin Truex Jr. Pushed a little wide in the center of 3 and 4. Truex tried to go to the outside into 1 and 2. That's not going to work out for him, and he's going to lose second place potentially as Kyle Busch gets underneath him on the backstretch. Boyer almost lost the lead for the first time. Really the first mistake he's made the whole race. Just gave up a little bit too much bottom. And very aggressive in pulling down to try to hold on to that lead in the process. Now Busch is in second, Truex back to third. Haven't seen any lap traffic yet in this one. The only reason I'm racing as aggressively as I did with Truex is because we've led every lap, and I desperately want to try to lead every single lap in this race. I think it'd be cool. Keep anybody else from getting any bonus points, although really the only driver I'd be concerned in that happening to is Tony Stewart. He's nowhere near the race lead right now as far as his interval to ourselves. He could be in fourth place for all we know position-wise, but we really don't know. The only car we know of for a fact that's out is Jeff Burton in the 21. Take a nap now? I don't know why you're asking permission. Take a nap whenever you want to. You're a grown-ass man. NASCAR needs to do something with toe links. To understand they break when they hit a wall. Yeah, it's not really like, I mean, they can break when they hit the wall. It seems like more often when they break, it's because of body-to-body contact. If a driver's getting hit right on the wheel of the car, more than it is a car hitting the wall. Like, very rarely when a car catches the wall that it's going to break a toe link, because the bodies are so stiff and the chassis are so stiff now. It doesn't really cave in and even cut the tire. There's no crush with the side panels, essentially, but yeah, if there's a driver involved in like a spin, though, and they get clipped on the wheel, or in the case of like, well, I guess it was a steering column that broke for Ryan Blaney, but in the case of like a Watkins Glen where we saw, who was it? It was Stenhouse. Stenhouse broke a toe link, but he had gotten up against the guardrail and there was no safer barrier there, so it was kind of like a, you know, the wall might have been pointed a little weirder that it broke his toe link there. I don't know what they can do to fix it, honestly. Again, it's just the way the car is built, and they can't really do a lot of fundamental changes with it from where we're already at. I feel like, you know, if they could have fixed something like that before, they definitely would have. We're 3 years in. We're still having toe link issues. I think it sucks when a driver gets taken out because of a broken toe link because they get hit in a weird spot, even if it's super soft. But a driver can like bash the nose into the front of the wall, like head on into a wall, like 3 times, and it may not crush enough that they could still continue on in the race. Like, that doesn't make any sense at all to me. Like, I don't know how that could be the case. Red Sox out of the way. Awesome. Yeah, so that left front tire's in the red on our tire wear indicator, but honestly, the car feels fine. It doesn't feel super loose. Honestly, it doesn't feel any looser than it would have the start of the race. I did make a wedge adjustment when I was on pit road that first time to try to help mitigate taking the rights only to hang on to the lead. It's going to be tough to go wire to wire in this one, though, because I made the 2-tire stop that time. I'm not going to be able to do that again. Even if I went lefts only on the next stop, I still don't think I'd be able to get away with doing that. 50 laps to go yet. The fact that we're even going to go over 100 laps on these left side tires is pretty wild in and of itself. But again, so far, Clint Boyer has led them all. And ever since Truex fell back to third, he is losing touch of these top two cars up ahead of him. Clint Boyer and Kyle Busch. Another 28.2 that last lap. So there's still great lap times that are being put down even on these ridiculously old left side tires. This car just has that mechanical grip here tonight. Little wide center of 3 and 4. Busch didn't quite get to the inside for the lead yet. Lap 100 now. See the tail end of the field. If we do stay green long enough to get these pit stops, I would think that the field will get spaced apart enough. We will definitely have lap traffic pretty soon on the other side of a green flag stop. Both left side tires in the red on the tire wear indicator now. Boyer really trying just to protect the bottom. He'll give the outside to Busch. Just doesn't want to give up the inside. He's still doing a good job holding on to the race car. Hasn't had to worry about the car getting aero loose, even with the 5 car directly behind him at times. I mean, maybe I do be aggressive with it and go with the left sides only. It's early enough in the season. I feel like I'm going to try it. We're maybe never going to get this opportunity again the rest of the year to lead every single lap in a race in any of the series, let alone here in the Busch series. So why not try it while we're up here? Now, I'm also going to have to stay out of the pits as long as I possibly can and hope that Busch can't make it another lap longer on fuel. Only one Darlington stripe this whole race, too, in turn 2. Legend difficulty, yeah. Yes, sir. Legend difficulty the whole season. We haven't led a single race with the points lead yet, so that tells you anything. Which is another reason why I also don't think I'm going to be in position to try to capitalize on leading every single lap. I mean, it's only the second pole I've had this season, for instance. So, I mean, we definitely We had a dominant car and led over 200 to 250 laps at Richmond in the last race. That was our first pole of the year. But we never had a chance to do what we're doing here and lead every lap. We do have green flag pit stops going on at the moment. Kyle Busch still has not hit pit road. Boyer gapped him a little bit through 1 and 2. Boyer getting tight in the dirty air behind this lapper. And now Busch pits. So going into turn 3, lap 106, coming to lap 107, Kyle Busch pits. Boyer still out in front. But Boyer will have to pit very, very soon. How much longer do we go? I'm going to stay out at least this time as well. I really want to lead every lap. I'm just hoping that nobody... Can't really see the track map at the moment. Just ran my fastest lap. That doesn't make any sense, but... I mean, I guess it's a light fuel load, but... Oh boy, that was the first time I got actually a decent amount of loose in the center of the corner. We're going to pit this time. And hope that we're the last car that is pitting. Left sides only. Take that half round of wedge out of the car again and let's see. I don't even know that I'm still in the lead. Like, we could have had one more car stay out of the pits, and that would be the difference of me not leading every lap and leading every lap, which is why it's just so hard to do in a full race. Would have taken 4. I'm trying to go for history here. The stat nerd is going for history. Kyle Busch pitting earlier than us, a 4th. Oh, we didn't even lead every lap. Yep. Well, if I would have known that, I would have taken 4. It does... Well, no, we're not on the lead lap either. Dale Jr. is leading now, and he just passed us. And now Dale Jr. is coming to pit road, so we'll be back on the lead lap. Just hit the wall down the straightaway. Well, I tried. Really need this thing to stay green the rest of the way. So Dale Jr. got to lead at least a lap or 2 under caution. There's a fantasy driver that just led a lap on pit road that time. Now our driver, Clint Boyer, is now back in the lead. And we'll know at the start-finish line next time by exactly what that lead is, interval-wise. "37 laps to go here at Darlington." Oh, that right. 28.129, 4.9 second lead for Boyer. I didn't think that right front tire was going to go in the red that quickly. The smart thing to do would have definitely been to take 4. I'm well aware of that. I was just trying to lead every single lap, but unfortunately I couldn't push the fuel run long enough to be able to do that anyway. So we're not going to lead every lap in this race. There were 2 or 3 laps during that green flag pit stop transition we did not lead. I feel like I've been taking care of my tires long enough. Those right sides should be able to hold on. I mean, that's 102 laps. I didn't lock the tires up coming into the pits, so that's big. Did not have a tire lock up. We're going to get our field passes out of the way. Stand by at the start-finish line. Slightly slower pace for Boyer might save those tires a little bit more as well. Try to get Harvick back on the lead lap as he passes Kurt Busch for 31st. Just went a lap down to the 2 of Boyer recently. Get him back. Oh, yeah, Harvick back up to 25th. Haven't seen Tony Stewart this far back in the running order, at least. Oh, big slide getting into 3. It was a little too low on corner entry. It's going to hurt that corner exit speed. More said carries a little bit more straightaway speed there. I did take a half a round of wedge out of the car again, too. It's definitely tightening up the old right side tires. I was expecting that, so that's why I took the wedge out. Made that slight adjustment. Oh boy, getting back to Boyer again. I should have waited till the exit of the corner to transfer to him. I brought out a caution. Yeah, that was tough trying to swap to him in the middle of the corner like that. Should have held off a bit. Lost a couple spots. Trying to get the spot back on Ron Hornaday. Honestly, I think there's a good chance we can get Kevin Harvick into the top 20. We're only going to stay with him for a couple more laps. We'll ride it out with the 2 of Clint Boyer the rest of the way. We'll contact off turn 4, a couple cars up there. Oh, I overcorrected. I was turning right to go left, and I snapped it back into the wall. That was a big hit. Definitely an aggressive corner entry. That was a little better that time. My diamond cut the corner off there. Swapping back to Boyer for the rest of this race now. 22 to go this time by. I just hope that right front tire lasts for 102 laps at Darlington. I mean, that is asking a lot out of it. I knew I should have. Sometimes, as aggressive as you want to be going for history like that, trying to lead every lap in a race, we didn't get it. That's not going to take care of the right side tires any hitting the wall. Only the second Darlington stripe Boyer's earned today. Saw Harvick obviously get the wall a couple laps ago, but only a second time for Boyer. First time down in 3 and 4. First time I had it was off turn 2. Scraped the wall earlier. Honestly, 127 laps, I've only hit the wall twice. That's pretty good. I will take that. Well, all but a few laps. Ari Vlog 24, thanks for tuning in. Greetings from Brazil. 20 laps to go. And that leads down to just 1.4 seconds. It was about 4.5, 5-second lead when Boyer first came out of the pits. As long as I win, it doesn't matter. But 102, I know. Halfway out of fuel. Halfway through this fuel run. Has the right rear gone into the red yet? Or is it just the right front? Tight on fuel? No, fuel's going to be fine. We're plenty good on fuel. Only have 17 laps left. No, this is not wireless. Did PS2s have wireless controllers back in the day? I feel like they probably did, but I don't have wireless. Not for this console, at least. Thought I pitted with 39 to go. You know what? We did. We did pit after lap 100, didn't we? I think I pitted at lap 108. 40 to go. That's a good point. Why are we burning so much fuel this run? I'd still like to think we're plenty good. 3 wide. Oh boy, little contact. Not with Boyer. Boyer just trying to get by these lappers. Puts 2 lap cars between himself and Kyle Busch in second. Busch trying to run down Boyer to get his second win of the season. 13 laps to go for the 2. Older right side tires and about a 9/10 of a second lead. It was 5 seconds at one point. At least able to get through the lap traffic pretty cleanly so far. The car is definitely tighter than it was, that's for sure. I made adjustments. If I didn't make the adjustments I did on pit road, it'd be even more tight. So I'm glad I did what I did. It's managed it at least a bit. 28.015, fastest lap of the race that last time for the two, so he's not really able to manage tires right now either. Trying to get away from Busch. I can manage them by not making contact with any cars with that right front and not making contact with the wall. Try not to slide them too much in the corners by not using too much of that apron. I mean, that's kind of the racing line at Darlington to use a little bit of it anyway, so. But maybe try not to dive well below it like we were with Harvick when we had the fresher tires with him. There is a huge, and I mean huge, line of lap traffic in front of the race leader, Clint Moyer. One car down on the apron, headed into turn one. I believe somebody blew an engine, 10 laps to go. They'll stay to the bottom of the track and out of the way, I do believe. Well, maybe not. Can't tell if they blew an engine. Yeah, they did blow a motor. They're going pretty quick down there, though. Now they're finally slow enough. They'll get to pit road, will stay green. Kind of, since we got into lap traffic, though, we are managing an 8 to 9/10 of a second lead. There's a few lap cars at a time between the top two, so there's a little bit of comfortability there for Boyer. Just getting through these cars cleanly. Lapping Clint Boyer underneath Kevin Harvick in the 29 now. Actually about a 10th quicker than second place that last lap. Couple rows of side-by-side traffic up here. Seven laps to go this time by. One second lead. Pretty even with second place that last lap. Boyer to the inside of Jimmy Johnson. I've had a way worse handling car with old tires like this before. Now the right rear's in the red. Okay, so it wasn't before. It is now. Both right side tires are very, very worn, but the car's still rotating without over-rotating. Lap times in the 28.0s. Some of the fastest of the race for Boyer. Shows how hard he's really pushing right now. It also shows, though, how quick Kyle Busch in second is, that he's not losing any ground. He's not really gaining it in traffic either. I'm shocked at how smooth all these lap cars have been to pass so far. 27.979, fastest lap of the race for Boyer. Really low, sliding up. Oh, that was not what we needed there. That was definitely a corner overdrive. Boyer trying to get back in rhythm again into 3 and 4. Busch has side-by-side traffic in front of him. That was the first struggle to get by a lap car, but that was on Boyer for just overdriving it. Down to a 6 to 7/10 of a second lead now. Boyer finally clears that car into turn 1. Larson Pocono 21. Oh my gosh, that would be terrible. There's no cautions on the final lap either. So we got to really hope this thing just holds on to the finish. I mean, it's been in the red since we had like 30 to go. Got Aaron Crocker, top 5 in points, about to go lap down. Ran another 27.9 that last lap. Busch has still got about 4 or 5 lap cars between himself and Boyer. I think Boyer's fine as long as the tire holds. Should hold on and manage this gap to the finish. Quarter tank of gas left. Plenty to make it to the end with 2 laps to go. And was about a 10th quicker than Kyle Busch that last lap. So the tires a little bit to get it to turn into turn 1, but hanging on to it. Headed to 3 and 4, white flag this time by. It will be the final lap of the race. Clean air in front of the 2. And still 4 lap cars in between first and second at the line. And one more corner to go. Strategy panned out anyway. Maybe a little more nerve-wracking than it needed to be, but an aggressive call works out. Clint Boyer dominates, leads over 140 laps, and wins at Darlington. Awesome day. Couldn't have been much better. Whatever we had left on the right side tires, we're burning them off now. Under 2 laps on right at Darlington. I mean, honestly, the fact they were in the reds as long as they were is kind of mind-boggling to me, to be completely honest. We led all but 6 laps in this race. 141 laps led. Obviously a max points day. Kyle Busch didn't lead any laps, finishes in second. Martin Truex Jr. led 2 laps, finishes third. Dale Jr. finishes fourth, leading 2 laps. Elliott Sadler fifth, no laps led. Brian Vickers sixth. Tony Stewart seventh. No laps led for Tony Stewart. So we are going to gain some points on him, but he does get a good day with the top 10. Mark Martin finishes 8th, Art Cooper 9th, and Kenny Wallace ends up in 10th. There was C. Erickson led 1 lap. There's one other driver that led a lap. Denny Hamlin led a lap during green flag pit stops also. Our teammate Kevin Harvick finished a lap down in 23rd. And in total in this race, we had 10 cars finish on the lead lap. That's it. 1 caution, and that was back at lap 42. Lead changes, we had 10 of them, which doesn't make any sense because we only had 6 laps. We didn't lead, so we definitely didn't have 10 lead changes. that literally doesn't make any sense at all. Margin of victory was 0.8 of a second. 1 hour, 15 minutes, 43 seconds. Total time in this race, again, 159.09. Honestly, the only reason I think the tires held on as long as they did is because I wasn't sliding the car in the corners. Like, as old as the tires were, I was still running quick laps. Very strange. It's not always like that when you have old tires on this game. You have old tires on this game, some tracks it feels like you're going to wreck and you have to bring it in because you're about to wreck. But not the case here today for some reason. I don't know why that was the case, especially at a track like Darlington. Jeff Burton blew an engine. That was back on lap 39 before the first yellow. Hans Good blew an engine lap 103. J.J. Yaley lap 137 blew a motor. And Greg Biffle, who got in that crash, finished 2 laps down in 40th, but did finish the race. Again, he was the only cause of the caution. It was off the front bumper of J.J. Yaley, oddly enough, so weird how that works out. Maybe those two had too much damage on their cars. But yeah, that's our finishing result. 7th win of the season for Boyer. Mute the game real quick. I don't think we're in the points lead still. We'll be going into the 13th race of the year at the Lowe's Motor Speedway, now known as, of course, Charlotte Motor Speedway, but I don't think we are going to be leading in points yet. Even with the repave, couldn't do more than 70? Yeah, probably not. It is a video game, after all. That's the only explanation I have. So Clint Boyer, 16 points out. Gained quite a bit tonight. 44 points gained. Go from minus 60 to minus 16. And honestly, we're just a win and a Tony Stewart 3rd place finish away at Charlotte from taking our first points lead of the season. So we'll see if we can do that. Very good probability we end up doing that race tomorrow night. If we don't do that race tomorrow night, it'll be a truck race. But that will be our next stream on the channel, and it will be, of course, NASCAR 07. Hopefully you enjoyed tonight's stream. Be sure to hit the like button if you haven't yet. Subscribe for more daily NASCAR content. See you back and better than ever again tomorrow night. I'll have the community tab up on the channel tomorrow as far as the streaming schedule for Monday through Thursday this week before we get into the live commentary content from Kansas next weekend. So appreciate it, everyone. Have a good rest of your Sunday night. Go Pack, go!